Hey everybody, I'm Lon Stroschein, former public company executive turned lifestyle engineer. In 2022, I walked away from my job as a public company executive. I left without a safety net, without another job, without a backlog of clients, or without a resume. But I left anyway. I left because I knew the best days of my life were right in front of me, and they weren't going to be lived where I was standing. Since then, I've launched a best-selling book, coached thousands of elite performers around the world, hosted a top-rated podcast, moved my family across the country, and created a movement that has inspired the change in 1,000 lives. Look, if you're here, it's not an accident or an algorithm. It's you. If you've reached the top of your game and you feel stuck, if you'd trade what you have but don't know what you'd trade it for, then buckle up. This podcast is for you. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. I'm going to see all of you along the Normal 40 Highway. My name's Lon Stroschein, the founder of Normal 40, and I am super excited to be here. And guess what? I am super excited that you are here too. We have a blowout of a show for you. I just got to spend an hour with my now friend, Stephanie Stuckey. For those of you who have ever taken a road trip at any point in your life, well, for those of you of a certain age who have ever taken a road trip at a certain point in your life, you probably remember the Stuckey's stops along the way, the blue roofs, Stuckey's painted all over the top. And this is the granddaughter of the founder of the company that pretty much operated out of bankruptcy for more than a decade before Stephanie left the job she created for herself after a career in public service, law school, and school of hard knocks. And she decided to walk away from it all and take back her family's business and try to turn around this little 5-person operation that had shrunk from 365 locations to just a handful. And she decided to make it her life's mission to bring it back to life. And to hear her tell the story that started just in 2019 and getting through COVID and what it took and what it was like the day she decided to do it, it's a proper ramble. So you're going to love this conversation. I'm super excited that you're here. I'm super excited that Stephanie spent some time with us. And I'm going to see all of you on the podcast. Couple things. One, thanks for taking time to do this.
Sure.
I love your story. I don't imagine you know anything about Normal 40. And
I've listened to a couple of episodes.
Oh, great. Well, then you know that the people who show up here are people like you 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's thousands and thousands of people who show up somewhat miserable with what they're doing, not being unsuccessful after a lot of success and not doing bad work, just not wanting to do it anymore. And they don't know what to do about it. And so it was actually a client of mine who said, "Hey, do you know Stephanie Stuckey?" I said, "No, but I used to drive by blue-topped gas stations called Stuckey's, and I totally just said it as a joke." He's like, "No, that's her." I'm like, "What? Really?" Totally love it. I love it. We're going to have so much damn fun on this podcast. You're not going to believe it.
So good. All right, let's roll because my batteries, I've got like 40%. So hopefully that's good.
Oh yeah. Well, we will crush it. Here's how I just love to start. Just tell me about you and wherever you want to start. And if you need a place to start, tell me about 6th grade.
6th grade. So I went to an all-girls school in Washington, D.C. because my dad was in Congress and really had 2 lives. We lived in Georgia and we lived in Washington, D.C., small town Georgia, and then a very cosmopolitan city where I went to a private all-girls college prep school that was intensely competitive. So imagine all of the stresses that you get at that age, 6th grade, 7th grade, that's 12, 13 years old, right? And it's already, you're going through a lot of changes, and then you have this intensely competitive environment. And it was competitive in a different way. It wasn't about looks or clothes because we had school uniforms. It was about grades. So it was an interesting environment and I loved it because I made a lot of great friends, but I also learned how to deal with stress and pressure. I thought college was nothing compared to how hard high school was. And I went through high school thinking I wasn't all that smart because I was a B student and an occasional A student. And then I went to Vanderbilt, which is a great school, right? But my friends went to Yale and Stanford and MIT. And so they kind of looked down that I wasn't at that caliber. And then I go to Vanderbilt and I was smart. I made Dean's List. I was like, wait, what? I'm not smart. I'm the B student. That was me at 6th grade and throughout high school.
Well, you dropped kind of a truth bomb on us really early. So your dad was a member of Congress. How much time did you spend in DC and how much time did you spend in Georgia?
Most of my time was in DC. So summers were in Georgia
All right.
and
So
vacations, holidays.
yeah,
All my family, both sides of family, we're from Georgia. So that's where I am now. I went back home, ended up transferring to the University of Georgia, went there law school as well, and just love this state. This is home.
super cool. So if you don't mind then, so fast forward. So now you've gone through college and just walk us through kind of your first set of experiences, first set of jobs after college and the life you started to build for yourself.
I had very different jobs, but they all had a common theme, which is public service. Really had a passion to serve. And I started out as a public defender after law school. I worked in the state prison system, and then I worked in City of Atlanta and Fulton County Public Defender's Office, and I defended clients against murder, armed robbery, rape, you name it. I did it. And then I transitioned to being a state representative. I spent 14 years in the legislature and really became passionate about the environment, something I always cared about, but really became a focal point of my life when I got elected to the legislature, and I served on the Natural Resources Committee. So I was extremely active in clean air, clean water, land preservation, waste management, solar energy, electric vehicle charging, tax incentives, the whole gamut of ways that government can get involved in good policy making to protect our environment. So that became my passion. And then I left that to run an environmental law firm. And then I left that to be head of sustainability for the City of Atlanta, a job I absolutely loved. And I was also teaching at the University of Georgia School of Law, teaching environmental law. And then I got a phone call at age 50-ish saying that the company my grandfather had started but had sold and had been out of our family and was now in really tough times and 6 figures in the red, that it was for sale and they were looking for a buyer and they couldn't find a buyer. So they were calling people with the last name Stuckey. So that's when everything changed and I became a candy maker.
What year was that, Stephanie?
It was November 2019. So almost 2020 and right before COVID. So you want to talk about
a time to buy a business.
Right? Here's the thing, there's never a perfect time. And some of the absolute most successful, most iconic businesses in the country and in the world were founded during economic hard times. Microsoft, Facebook, Revlon. I don't know why I think Revlon, Amazon. The list goes on and on. You look, they were founded during hard times. And so I think that really forges resilience. And it's also a time, which is what this show is about, when you reassess your priorities, right? COVID, everyone's staying at home. You have time to reflect on life. Economic hard times, you have to tighten your belt. You have to figure out, how am I going to make it? Is this job that I'm working going to get me through it? And are there other avenues for me? And you really start to be introspective when externally a lot is happening outside of your control. So you start wanting to control things yourself. And that's when I think entrepreneurship takes root.
So let's go back and dissect your past just a little bit. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about what you're doing now because it is mind-blowingly.
Let's talk about pecans.
So, but look, your story, I want to put it in perspective from an outsider's view, like me.
Yeah.
So you had to come from a place and a time where the Stuckey name was powerful, and it still is. But I mean, as a 6th grader, you didn't probably really appreciate it. But it was there and everybody knew it, not only in your hometown, but probably everywhere you went. You were William's granddaughter. That was a thing. And that just kind of shaped you. Then you went to a private Catholic school. And then you went to university.
Episcopalian.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Episcopalian. Important. See some of my research.
Right.
I'll talk to my background people and scold them. Oh wait, that's
no,
me.
You can tell that we were Catholics. Episcopalians are Catholic light.
Very good.
Much more liberal in general, but
I love it.
I love it.
We're gonna get along just fine. So then, but you went to Vanderbilt, and didn't you study French?
I did. Mais bien sûr, je parle français. Yeah,
whatever.
It's a good liberal arts degree. I'm a big fan of that. And then you can specialize in life. But I just think having that solid foundation where you study philosophy and semiotics of German film, art history. I studied so many fascinating subjects in college that just enrich your life and make you more creative and make you a better leader. you're solely focused on just one thing, I think it limits you, and it prevents you from really thinking creatively and outside the box. So French may not have been practical in a traditional sense, but it's a wonderful degree. And I learned English better because I understand more how words are formed and conjugated, and how you pronounce words, and different phrases that they say in French that they don't say in English that I now adopt in English, like comfortable in my own skin. You know, the French say that all the time. Why don't we say that here?
Yeah, because we can't be, for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the French have a word for you all, whereas here we say you guys or y'all, or, you know, we need a word for that. Other languages have solved that. Why don't we say that? You know, the French, you say nous sommes contents. You know, why don't we say that?
So when you went to Vanderbilt and you declared your major as a French major, where did you think it was going to lead you?
I wanted to go to law school. I just thought I'm going to get a good liberal arts degree. That's a great thing about law school. You can major in chemistry or computer science and go on to law school. So it's not like medicine, right? Where you really do have to have a specific degree to be prepared.
So you knew, spoiler alert for the people listening, your next stop was law school. You knew you were going to be a lawyer.
No, I knew I wanted to be a public servant. And I thought a law degree is just a great calling card and gives you gravitas, some credibility.
Yeah.
And it's just so many great skills. So I really didn't go to law school thinking I was going to practice law, but then I got in that whole environment, and all of my classmates, with very rare exception, wanted to be lawyers, and it's infectious. And you go through all that hard work, you survive your first year, which is a backbreaker. It's brutal. They really do try to weed you out, and you survive that first year, and then you get through it. And, you know, I thought, well, I've got to pass the bar. I've got to at least take the bar exam. What's the point if I don't at least have a license? So I passed the bar, and then I thought, well, I passed the bar. I got to at least try a case. Not realizing, you know, really most lawyers don't try cases. But I didn't feel like I could really say I'm a lawyer unless I could do the whole Atticus Finch thing.
Yeah.
And so, like so many people in the South, especially, I was inspired by To Kill a Mockingbird, read the book, saw the movie, and I thought, that's me. And so I became a public defender, and I tried cases.
Well, that's not easy street. Public defender.
It's not.
It's hard cases,
really
challenging
hard.
clients, no money, long hours.
Yeah. All that. I loved it.
What did you learn in there that you still use to this day, in that grind and that mess and that chaos? When, by the way, at the same time, you were someone's only hope. Yeah,
that was a lot of pressure. You learn to deal with pressure. You learn to manage a lot simultaneously. My caseload for cases that were actually having to be prepped for trial would probably be about 10 to 15 cases on any given court calendar, depending on how many I could plead out, or, you know, find a resolution, or, you know, through a motion, I could get them dismissed. But the caseload was really hard to manage. I mean, often I would have, overall, the cases would be like 100, you know, that you would manage, anywhere from the first pretrial probable cause hearing to appellate work. You know, you would do I would do appeals. So managing a lot with limited resources, it's the best training for being an entrepreneur. You have to learn how to judge people very quickly. You're selecting a jury. You have to ask a few questions and be able to sum up a person. And we could not afford jury consultants. We're the public defender. So you had to decide very quickly, is this someone who is going to be fair and balanced and non-biased towards my client? And so that was hard. You have to learn how to think very quickly on your feet. You have to be persuasive in front of a crowd. And for me, especially, this is the thread throughout my career, advocate for the underdog. I did that in politics, working for the environment. And as a lawyer, later on, I practiced environmental law. My client was the environment. And that I didn't represent industry. I represented river keepers and the Sierra Club and community organizations and property owners whose property was being damaged by pollution. So I learned to speak persuasively for the underdog and be passionate about the underdog. And then I guess finally finding compassion and something good in every situation. Because if I didn't have some sort of connection with my client, even though they had done some pretty horrific things, most of my clients had redeeming qualities. In fact, all of them, really, I found some redeeming quality. And I found, during the trial, like I would have to make sure I actually demonstrated that, because the jury, they pay attention not just to your words, but to your body language. You learn about human psychology if you try a case. Your body language matters. If you're pitching a case or if you're pitching a product, if you're talking to a group of people, your body language, how you position yourself matters. So if I sit far apart from my client, if I never touched him on the hand, I would always ask my client, take notes. And then I would look over, like I was reading them, like, oh, that's really, even though he could be doodling or she could be doodling, but I'd be like, oh yeah, not in a fake way, but you want to demonstrate that there is something redeeming about this person. So that's so important in business.
Oh my gosh. Is there an individual who you still stay in touch with from that time in your life?
No. I was at a party it was about 5 years ago. I was at a very nice event, and it was some sort of charity event, and the bartender looked familiar, and he pulled me aside later and he said, "You were my public defender." And I have met people. Dividends. Yeah, I've met people who were on my jury. I was in baggage claim at the airport, and this guy looked over at me and he said, "I was on your jury." And I was like, "Which one?"
All right. Well, I could talk a long time about this, but let's keep going, because this is so important. Okay. So now you're a public defender, you've got your law degree, you're trying cases. Then you go into state government, work for the city of Atlanta. You become a adjunct professor, and somewhere in all this chaos, or probably at a whole bunch of places in this chaos, there's something pulling at you. I'm kind of guessing, but I have a feeling there's something pulling at you that's called family legacy. That's called your last name, your namesake. That's kind of probably percolating in the background. And so here's what I want you to do. Now we understand your path, the path you took, but now talk about the emotion of being that sixth grader, hearing your name, knowing what was going on. And maybe you didn't, but just talk about being a Stuckey in a world where the business name is associated with your last name, and just kind of the feelings from a sixth grader to where you got to when you finally said, damn it, I'm going to buy this business back. Take me through some of those emotions.
Well, the great thing about my upbringing in Washington, D.C., nobody really gave a rat's ass that my last name was Stuckey. And they, by and large, really didn't know Stuckeys. I went to school with a lot of wealthy individuals who didn't take a lot of road trips, and they didn't pull over at Stuckey's. And they, we were in the Northeast, our stores were in the Northeast, but there were a lot of, Northeasterners. And Washington, D.C. is unlike any other city. My classmates, their parents were diplomats. They were from around the world, or they were in the Pentagon. So the Army kids, or the military brats, so to speak, they had heard of our brand because they traveled around. They stayed in small town America. We're a small town America brand. And then you have the politicians' kids. So depending if, there was a woman, Hutchie Brock. Her dad was Senator Brock from Tennessee, actually the Brock candy family. So she'd heard of our brand, but she was kind of in the candy business just like us. But most of my classmates and the young women I went to school with, they hadn't heard of Stuckey. So I was lucky. If I'd grown up in Eastman, Georgia, I would have been the big fish in this very tiny pond of a small town where I would have had a very inflated sense of self, I think. So I really didn't have a lot of pretense. And my grandfather sold the company a year before I was born, and it was out of our hands. So I really knew him as my grandfather. I called him Big Daddy. So I knew him as Big Daddy. I didn't know him as a businessman. And honestly, and I listened to your podcast, and you have a lot of people who did have that tugging at them that, oh, there's something more. I don't like this job at IBM. I don't like this job at wherever. And or maybe I like it, but I'm not fully satisfied. I think there's more to what I can offer the world. And it comes later in life, midlife. I didn't have that. I was very happy where I was. I was not looking to change. I loved the sustainability world. I literally got a phone call saying, Stuckey's is for sale. Do you want to buy it? It was a call. It was an unexpected call.
Let's talk about that. Tell me Tell me about what was going on to the degree to as with as much clarity as you can. Tell me about where you were, what was going on, what you thought was important when you woke up that morning, and what
Yeah.
became this. Well, what the hell am I going to do with this moment? Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
It was just a mundane moment. I was at work, I was at my computer, I was typing, and Greg, who had been the CFO of Stuckey's and had been retired for over a decade and was still tangentially involved in the company and was one of the owners. He still managed the finances and knew that things weren't looking great. And he called me and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he kind of goes right to the point. That was it for the niceties. And he said, "Stuckey's is for sale. We're out of fresh ideas. We want to know if you'd want to buy it." And then I obviously asked for, "Oh, let me see the financials." I didn't even know what financials to ask for. I didn't know how to read a balance sheet. I didn't know the difference between a balance sheet or an income statement. I didn't know what EBITDA was. I'd never heard of EBITDA. I didn't know how you evaluate it or value a company. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was, like you said, I love my grandfather, and I called my siblings and my cousins. My grandfather had 7 grandchildren, 6 were living at the time. And so I called the others and I said, "Who's in this with me?" I was thinking, like, let's do this as a team. I've always liked to do things as a team. And I said, "Let's do this, y'all." And every single one was pass, pass. No bank would loan me money to buy it. I had to spend my own cash. I had to spend cash. So
Real money.
it was 500,000. And I normally don't like to give out numbers. I now have a couple of business partners and they're always saying, "Don't give out numbers," but the New York Times reported it. So it's out there. It's a Google search away. So that's what I paid basically for the trademark. That's what we had at that point. It was a trademark.
Existed. There were
Trademark.
what did you buy? That was it. You bought the right to use your name and logo again.
I bought my name back. And there were about 50 franchised stores. We did not own or operate the stores, but we owned the franchises. And there was a rented warehouse in my hometown, Eastman, Georgia. And all of the stuff that you saw in the stores, like we were known for these tacky souvenirs, Dunkin' Birds and whoopee cushions, rubber alligators, and then all sorts of candy that in his day, my grandfather made the candy. It was absolutely delicious. Pecan snacks and candies. Everything had pecans in it. Everything was sourced from local Georgia pecan farmers. We're the #1 state for pecan production. So everything was sort of centered around this great experience. He had food, he had snacks, he had souvenirs, he had the candies. And so when I bought the company, there was a rented distribution center and all that product was outsourced. And really we weren't making, the financials weren't working. We were buying product and then you had to mark it up and then you sold it to these few stores, and we couldn't buy or produce product or get product in volume to get the pricing down where the margins really made sense. And so I think at the time, the blended margin was about 27%, which really isn't a lot when you're trying to run a company. So we were about 600,000 and some change in the red. And our physical assets were it was inventory that hadn't been like 6 cases of Britney Bitch t-shirts. Thank goodness Britney Spears made a comeback, right? I got to sell that at a profit. John Wayne bobbleheads. My cat's joining me. For those who are watching this,
that's just fine.
My assistant.
Okay.
So I'm working from home today. We have a candy plant now, and I'm at the candy plant a lot. But I just got back late last night from the candy plant.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Normal 40 the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that one of the questions I get asked all the time is, okay, what's next? I'm here, I'm listening. Your content is good, the podcasts are great, but what can I really do? And I tell people, I've created a community for you. And I don't advertise it very much, but I'm going to advertise it here. The community is called The Insider. If you go to my website, normal40.com, click on communities, The Insider is $25 a month. And you can cancel after the first month or after the first year or after the first decade. It's a month-to-month conversation. And every day I'm in there and we're communicating in a forum. And every other Thursday we have office hours where I'm in there and the whole community shows up and we support one another through their journey. I want you to check it out. If you use code Insider Access, the first month is on me. Go to normal40.com, check out The Insider, and I'm going to see all of you on the inside. All right. I'll get you back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I'll see all of you on the next page. So I want to go back to this moment though, when you're fumbling around for the smart thing to ask for, and you don't even know what the smart thing is with the financials, and you're
Yeah.
feigning interest because it's the nice thing to do. At what point, at what point in this, uh, before I ask that question, what was your job? Where were you sitting? What were you actually getting paid to do when your phone rang?
I had two jobs at that point. I had left the city of Atlanta. We had a change in mayors, and I had been hired by one mayor, so changing of the guard. And I had
I
just gone
understand how that
over,
works.
right? It's politics.
Yep.
And I had gone over to a job that was created for me at a nonprofit called South Face Institute. And they are a nonprofit that focuses on energy, mostly energy efficiency, solar, but they do water conservation and really a full gamut of environmental initiatives. They had about, at the time, I want to say they had about 50 employees. So it's a good size nonprofit, and they service throughout the Southeast. They had, multi-million-dollar budget. They had a lot of strong philanthropy support, and their CEO was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine. And so I came to her. I couldn't find the quite the right job when I left the city of Atlanta. I picked up some consulting work just to keep busy. And a friend of mine said, well, the right job you haven't found because you've got all these really unique skill sets. Why don't you come up with the job you want? Come up with your job description, and then think about who could hire you, who that's a fit for, and then go pitch to them. So that's what I did. And I said, well, gee, I know how to work with cities. And I ran all the environmental initiatives for the city of Atlanta. I was on the mayor's cabinet. I was the state representative. So I know this world of government and cities, and a lot more cities are embracing sustainability, but a lot of cities can't afford to have a sustainability director. So what I pitched to South Face was, I will head up a new program called, I think we called it Cities Initiatives, something like that. I should know what it was,
That's
but
all right.
it was sustainability, sustainable cities
Yeah.
program. I think that was what we called it. And so I basically started monitoring RFPs, and we went after requests for proposals. We went after bids for cities across the Southeast that were looking for support with their environmental initiatives. And so those bids are routinely issued by government entities, but quite often the people who respond to those bids are for profit, they're private consultants. But since we were a nonprofit and we're subsidized by philanthropy, and nonprofit doesn't mean you don't generate income as long as it's aligned with your mission. You just like a charity hospital, right? They charge, they generate income. So we checked the law, make sure we were in compliance, but as long as we were doing mission-based work aligned with what our values and our goals and our vision was, then we were off to the races. So I was submitting bids, and I'd only been there for a year. I had a small team. I think there were 4 people on my team, and I had gotten us, we were running an electric vehicle charging program for the state of Georgia. We had gotten, we had partnered with a private entity to draft or execute the climate change plan for the city of Tallahassee. And we were in the process of bidding on, which they got after I left, the city of Sarasota. And so we were rocking and rolling.
Yeah. You were,
yeah.
This is my point.
I had this whole thing.
You had everything you'd set out to get.
Yeah, I love that
you
job.
Just said it. You said it was a job created for you based on your gifts. And this is I really want to spend some time here, because at some point you had everything you chased. I mean, everything. I mean, you got a law degree, you've been a public defender, then you went to work for the city, then you got elected on your own merits for 14 years to state legislature, then work for the mayor, then quit. I mean, it was checking every single box of the life that you set out to have. And then something happened though. Your phone rang. And now the path that you were on all of a sudden had a fork. Now, whether you take it or not is still to be determined. But you had this opportunity to just maybe go reclaim a legacy.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell me how you negotiated that in your mind, where you arrived at this place where you said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give up the security of safe pay. I'm going to give up this job that was made for me. I'm going to give up all of the people I've hired to help me, even though they're going to be fine. We all know that. And I'm going to go cash out my life savings. I'm going to go buy this relic that somebody's been bastardizing for 20 years, and I'm going to go all in on that. Tell me how you do that.
If I had phrased it to myself the way you just did, I would have passed. I honestly
tell me how you did phrase it.
I didn't know what I was in for. I was incredibly naive, which was my gift. I just knew I loved my grandfather. And I just think, how often does a family lose its business and get it back? It just hardly ever happens. I mean, you hear all the time about these wonderful, iconic American brands that we love that just went away, that were family owned, right? And it's because somebody sells. And that's okay. I'm not bashing that. Sometimes companies get sold and it's a good fit and they grow and they thrive. And sometimes it sucks. Like the last Howard Johnson's restaurant in America closed last year. I felt that very deeply.
So there's one big boy left, I think. The restaurant Big Boy. I don't know, maybe you don't.
There are actually quite a few, and my states are running together. I travel so much. Ohio has quite a few.
But how did I do want to know? And you gave one great answer. You just didn't know any better. You didn't know, so you just did it. But look, one of the things that the people who listen to my podcast get to, they're at this point where they see the fork.
Yeah.
And there's 100 different reasons why there's a fork. You didn't go look and it found you, but it was a call that wasn't probably going to happen against Stephanie, and you knew it.
Oh, that's right.
You knew this was her chance. It was now or probably never again. And so this fork presented itself for you, and it presents itself for so many people who are at the top of their game, who have everything they've gone after. They've checked the boxes. They're living the life that from the outside looking in is the life that they tried to build for themselves, and something is missing. And they see this fork in the road. And the reason they can't take the right, the reason they can't veer off and go do something else is because of the sunk cost of who they've become, because of this, the value they put into who they are, even though it's not needed purely for where they're going. How did you really rationalize in your mind how you're going to walk away from that, damn it, and go do this?
I love the way you put that with sunk cost. And that really resonates with me, because in the environment, we talk a lot about sunk cost.
Yes.
You know, the sunk cost of coal-fired power, right? And sunk cost of assets make it really, really hard to change how we generate energy in this country.
But it doesn't make it smart to keep doing it that way.
Right.
And so I had the sunk cost.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in personal terms, but the same thought process, that you sink a lot of energy into expertise. So the way I would answer that is, there's two kinds of those sunk costs or sunk knowledge. There's very specific expertise that you gain, right? Like I had to know that the rules of evidence to try a case, or I had to know legislative process to be a state representative. I had to have a base of understanding how the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act worked in order to be in that field. So there are certain areas that are very technical expertise. So that is a sunk cost that you don't get to use a lot. I really don't use a lot of those skill sets, but every now and then, we're looking at solar power for our manufacturing facility, and boy, is my background coming in handy on being able to analyze power bills. But with very rare exception, you're going to have to let go of some of those very technical skills that are sunk. But the bigger picture, and what I think is more important, are the transferable skills, like we talked about trying a case. So those bigger transferable skills is what you focus on. And those aren't gone. They're not sunk. All of those lessons that you've learned, you take with you. You don't check them at the door when you open a different door. They're still there. They're still with you. And you never know when it might come in handy.
All right. So you go through this process and you decide, I'm going to do this. Tell me about the moment when you knew you were going forward with this, and there was no question in your mind anymore. The negotiation was done and you're going to do it. Tell me what was going on.
I had a conversation with a very good friend. I talked to 3 financial experts and sought their advice. One, I think it's a good idea to get 3 opinions with something like a major life change and a major investment. But second, it took me 3 tries to find someone who said that it was a good idea or not a good idea. What my friend said was, this is very risky, but I see what you see that's not on the balance sheet, and that is the brand value. And quite often, sometimes you'll see like goodwill as a line item on valuations. I have seen that, but
Yeah.
so
All the time.
squishy, right? It's not a firm business. Like, how do you really calculate what goodwill is? But
You
it's that,
don't.
yeah, it's that value of the brand. It's the value of, even though I did grow up in an environment where people didn't know the brand when I was little, when I went to the University of Georgia, wow, people stopped me all the time. Last name Stuckey, get me a pecan log roll, you know. So I knew people had an emotional connection to that brand, and that was still around. And thank God, you know, our demographic was aging rapidly when I bought the company. We're getting younger and younger consumers who like our brand. Thank goodness, we have to. But when I bought the company, I knew we were on borrowed time if we didn't start turning things around really quickly, because the people who knew the brand, they're getting older. Better do it while people know who we are.
So tell me about day one when you walked in. Tell me about just the reaction of the employees and what you saw, and at what point did you kind of reflect back and go, oh my gosh, what the heck did I get myself into here?
Oh, there were only 5 employees, and I'd known most of them my whole life. So,
That makes it easy.
or maybe not my whole life, but even though I had not been directly involved in the business, they were my dad's coworkers. And then when my dad and his team all retired, they had a handful of people who, so, you know, long story, my grandfather sold the company out of the family for a long time. My dad reacquired it, but he was running another very successful company. And so I want to say this with love and affection and respect for my father, but he did not make Stuckey's a priority. He basically held on to it, and he did put some one good person in particular, a man named Chip Rosencrantz, who helped run the brand, and he was outsourcing the pecans and snacks and candies, and so he kept it alive. But there weren't a lot of resources devoted to Stuckey's that it needed to really grow as a brand. Most of the resources were on the other business, which was Interstate Dairy Queen Corporation. So those folks had all retired, but there were a handful that were still around. There were 5 employees still around, and I had known them. So it wasn't like I walked in and like, there's a new sheriff in town. Y'all don't know me. Like, they knew me. They were, I can't speak for them. I think they probably were glad to still have a job, because the company was spiraling downward. I know one of them sat me down and said, I give you a year, see if I'm going to stay.
Are they still there?
No. But that was personnel decision. Let's just say, you know, that's the problem with changing how you do business, because what we were doing wasn't working. And, you know, that's saying, if it ain't broke, fix it. Well, it was broke and we needed to fix it. It was very broke. And so just to say, oh, well, what we're doing was really working, we just weren't doing it right, which I tried for a year. And I thought we did actually manage to get out of debt pretty quickly. In a weird way, it was thanks to COVID, because I did know how to get government money. So I put those skills to use, and I applied for every COVID incentive, and we got the PPP, and we ramped up the online presence. So I did invest some money in online, and online we did well. So I got us out of the hole, but then we were flatlining, and I knew this was not a path to growth. And that's when I realized that we had to do something different. And I went back to our roots, literally, as a pecan snacking candy company. And that's when I got a business partner. We got government funding again to acquire a manufacturing facility in a small town, rural Georgia. There's government funds incentivizing food production in small towns, manufacturing in America. There's a lot of government incentives for that. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, both parties like funding food manufacturing in rural America. So hopefully we're safe no matter what happens with the elections. But that's what we did, and we changed how we did business. So frankly, some of the employees that had been around and were used to things being done a certain way, not everyone can adjust to that change. So actually, of the original employees when I bought the company, I'm the only one.
All right. So let's talk about that.
Some of them retired, I will say. Some did.
I understand.
Yeah, some actually did retire. Like they're on the beach having fun.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Normal 40 podcast. My name is Lon Stroschein, founder of the Normal 40, and I'm super glad you're here. Hey, really quick, by now you know it's my mission to inspire the change in 1,000 lives. And you know that this podcast is just one of the ways I'm doing it. You can also go to my website, normal40.com, and sign up for my free newsletter that comes directly to your inbox. Now, it's not really a newsletter in the sense that you're going to find much news in it. It's just letters from me to you, man, right where you are on your journey. The topics are going to vary from week to week, and I might have a guest article from time to time, but the intent of the Rambler is to meet you right where you're at, and I hope you sign up. You can also sign up for the 14 questions that changed my life. These are questions you can answer for yourself, but these are the questions I wrestled with when I was right where you are. Just a couple other things really quick. A few weeks ago, I launched my book called The Trade, and The Trade within minutes was an Amazon #1 bestseller in multiple categories, and it remains there to this day. I would love it if you'd go buy the book, not because you're going to get something out of me when you read it. It's because the book is going to get something out of you when you read it. Lastly, I've got a closed group off LinkedIn that I call the Insider, and this is where I hang out. I hang out a few times a month in cohorts and in one-on-one calls, and you can come in there and you can join the Insider and you can see for yourself that you are not alone. I would love to see you in there. Look, last thing I'll say is if you're here and this podcast is resonating with you and you can feel something burbling up, I want you to know that you are ready. You are here not because an algorithm. You are here because you are ready. And I want to help you see you through to the other side. Hey, everyone, thanks for being here. Check out the other episodes, and I'm going to see you a little further down the road. Well, Stephanie, you as an individual, and I can tell this is the first time you and I have ever talked.
Yeah.
You're just a powerful personality in the best possible way. I mean, that can cut both ways. Your personality is just spectacular. And reading how you write is something I can do for hours. I love your story brand. You've got a
You.
great knack for it. And the other thing that comes through, everything I read of yours is this passion for the brand. And it's sincere. It is a sincere, unashamed passion for the brand. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about how much fun that is. You know, one of the things that so many people, when they think about breaking off into something else, they've forgotten what they sound like when they get to sound like them.
Yeah.
They've forgotten their voice. They forgot how to have fun. They forgot how to be light. They don't even know what they sound like when they don't have to represent their company's brand, their boss, their
Yeah.
colleagues, their industry, and they just get to sound like themselves. But it reads to me like you've had a knack for just knowing how to talk the Stuckey's language. And I wondered if you can just talk about the energy you bring to the brand.
Well, it's just being passionate, like you said, and it comes from a place of authenticity. And that's really where passion resides is, do you really genuinely care about this? And I do. It's not just my family legacy. It's employing people in a small community and creating something really special and proving that you can make a comeback. I think that's the greatest story ever told is a comeback story. Everyone loves that. I mean, from the Bible, from my upbringing at a religious school, all the way to movies like Rocky and Rudy and the Bad News Bears even, people like to see the scrappy, hard times that we all experience and how do you pick yourself up and how do you make it? And so we're a comeback story. So I've got a great story, which really helps. And I'm a big fan of the book Good to Great. And they talk about the hedgehog principle, which is you find the intersection of what you're passionate about, what you're really good at, and what you can make money at. And so that's what our team has found. We are passionate about making the best tasting pecans you will find anywhere, sourced 100% from our farmers and our community. Everything's American made. Like we are so passionate about that. And we really do make the best you'll find anywhere, and we can make money at it. So that's what generates it all. Our value proposition is pecans are the only snack nut native to our country, yet you go to the snack aisles of America, and what do you see? You see almonds, you see cashews, pistachios, peanuts, and peanuts aren't even a nut, they're a legume. Said with love, but I love Georgia
You're
peanut.
from Georgia. You got to say that with love.
We have a very famous Georgia peanut farmer, President
Yes,
Jimmy Carter. So, love peanuts, but I'm just saying Pecans, the snack nut that is native to our country, that is meant to be grown on the soil and is the most sustainable nut. You cannot find it on the snack aisles other than it is fighting for space with the Brazil nut and the hazelnut and a mixed nut bag, which is just unpatriotic, right? I mean, come on. So I am passionate about that. I'm passionate about American homegrown products, American homegrown jobs, building back our economy. I'm not interested in running for office again, although it may sound like it. I'm interested in bringing the pecan back. That's my campaign
I love
platform.
it.
Yes, pecan.
Yeah, there we go.
That's my
Okay.
slogan.
So tell me now, you bought the company. There were 5 people there in debt, losing money. Tell me what the company looks like now. I'm not looking for dollars and cents and profit and loss, but just tell me, what's the company look like, and where is it kind of going over the course of the next 6 and 12 and 18 months?
Yeah. So in the past 4.5 years, we've gone from a little over $2 million in sales to 14 million. So the growth is there. And honestly, we would have more growth if we could produce more. So production capacity has been our biggest constraint. And I'll be honest, this past year was really hard on us. It was really, really rough. Inflation, interest rate. I know nobody wants to say inflation. The economy was challenging. Food prices are on the rise because ingredient prices are on the rise. And our interest rates on our loans went up 7 times cost of servicing debt. So we're in the sludge right now, to be honest, really trying to get out of some hard times. And I feel like we're getting out of it. We had to make a difficult decision to lay off employees earlier this year, which just broke my heart. But here's the fabulous thing. We're starting to hire back because we're gearing up for pecan season, but also the sales are ticking up. We picked up an account with Rural King, which is a good size farm and garden hardware chain. We've picked up Baumgars. So we're picking up some really good accounts, in addition to some regional grocery stores and convenience stores. So our employees have gone from the original 5 count to, we're right at 45. And we just started this week, and I'm a little tired today because I worked part of the night shift. We just started a second shift. We have a night shift now. I'm so excited. And oh my gosh, I worked till about, well, I want to say it was like 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, they stayed till 4:30 in the morning, the night shift. I mean,
Do you think
that's
so?
hard.
Going back to when your phone rang, and it was somebody you knew saying, "Hey, Stephanie, we're looking for somebody to buy this company."
Yeah.
Do you think, knowing what you know now, that you would have regretted not saying yes?
Oh yeah. We always regret the choices we didn't make. You don't I mean, of course you can have some regret about choices you did make, but often I find that those are just the greatest learning opportunities. And we have, and you hear this a lot, this is nothing novel, but I think it's important to repeat, of having a culture of embracing failure. And my business partner, I have a couple of investors, but it's me and my CEO. I'm the chair of the company, our CEO, and we jointly run the company. And he's always, anytime he addresses our team, he talks about embracing failure with compassion and dignity and grace. And so we really to celebrate that as part of our culture. And so regretting a decision that you made, I really don't do, because when we made a misstep, we call it out and we talk about it and we figure out what went wrong. And where you make a mistake is where you don't learn from it and you do it all over again.
So, in 1937, a guy by the name of William Sylvester Stuckey, a pecan farmer, borrowed $35 from someone or somewhere.
His grandmother.
His grandmother. See, I
yeah,
didn't know
Coralie. Yeah.
So your grandfather borrowed $35 from your great grandmother.
Yeah.
To create a pecan stand in rural Georgia.
Yeah.
That over the course of 25 years became 360 plus outlets. That's more than a property a month. At least during the growth after it started growing.
He was building stores that quickly at the peak. He sure was. So
And
mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling, and it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful, beautiful story. And nobody he does what anyone in his shoes would do. He decides to do something else, sell the company. And fast forward, his granddaughter, who he probably, I'm kind of guessing, didn't, I don't know how old you were when he passed. It doesn't
I
matter. But
just turned 12.
okay, so you had a relationship with him.
Yeah, yeah, I knew
Um,
him.
Fast forward to 2019, more than 30 years after he passed away, his granddaughter, who used to sit on his knee, says, God damn it, I'm taking this back. This is my name. My grandpa did this on 35 bucks of money that he borrowed from his mom. It's my turn.
Yeah.
And you've dedicated yourself to this. And I'm just curious to know what it is that you would love to tell your grandfather about what you're learning about his company.
I would, well, I really just want to thank him for creating such a legacy brand because he treated people with warmth and respect. And he created something that was more than just buying a product. It was an experience. And you hear that word bannered about a lot, but he really did that. You walked into his stores and everyone felt welcome. One of the things I'm most proud of is that Stuckey's, a company based in the Deep South during the 1950s and 60s, our stores were never segregated. So that just epitomizes how he created this atmosphere of all y'all are welcome. And because of what he did, our brand is still alive today. So I would just want to thank him. I would of course say, hey, am I doing okay? What do you think? How am I doing? I hope that I'm doing him honor. But more importantly, I think he would want this too. It's got to grow beyond him because I'm the only family member in the business. And I'm very cognizant that the rest of the people who work for our company did not know my grandfather. No one knew him but me. So it doesn't mean the same. Some people, it doesn't really mean anything. So I've got to make sure I am creating that our team, we are collectively creating this brand that resonates with everyone. And so just trying to make sure what he stood for is what I communicate more so than, oh, y'all, let's do this for my grandpa. They're like, we didn't know Big Daddy. But let's do this because we care about creating a sense of belonging and hospitality and the sense that we were a road tripping brand, right? So we're still about that, even though we're selling pecans. We're about freedom and fun and adventure and excitement and discovery and all the things that are wrapped up in that uniquely American experience of taking a road trip, whether we're on the road or selling pecan snacks. That's what we're doing.
It's romantic.
Yeah,
It's a
it really
romantic
is.
story.
It's sexy.
Absolutely. It is sexy. It's sexy and romantic. Who doesn't want to sell that kind of message? But it really is. You know, we say that tongue in cheek. And I'll tell you, my family and I, one really quick story.
Sure.
Our family business is Family Farm. My grandfather founded it in 1912. He lost it in 1929.
Oh.
My great grandfather, right in the
What was
cusp
the
of the
farm?
Depression. So it's in South Dakota. It's still in the family. So spoiler alert, we get it back.
I love that.
But it's corn, soybeans, and cows. Lost it in 29. My great grandfather. My grandfather bought it back from the same bank that foreclosed on my great grandfather. And my dad bought it from him, and my sister is now farming the farm. So I get it. And it's different when your name's on it. It's different when your name's on it to have that connection to it. So I get that kind of romance to it.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to say is, my family and we've got to do probably unfair levels of family trips. And to this, I mean, we've flown internationally, we've done all the things. That's not my point. The favorite trip that myself, my wife, and my 3 kids did together, we woke up on a Friday morning, not knowing where we were going to go, and we had 10 days. And we decided that morning which direction we were going to drive.
I love it.
And we ended up going down I-29, by the way, right past one of your former locations in Iowa.
I love that.
And we did a road trip. And to this day, if you ask my kids, what's their favorite trip over Disney World, over Paris, over all the things, it's like that road trip was so fun. When we just woke up in the morning, decided which direction we wanted to drive, road trip. And by the way, for me, as the one funding it, it was so inexpensive.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. And you pull over whenever, we did a trip like that when I was a kid. Same thing. It was our favorite trip. And our rule was, if any of us said, let's pull over, we pulled over.
Yeah.
Which you never do on a road trip normally, right?
You're right.
But like the
But
no
when you don't have an
rules,
agenda,
yeah,
when you
the
don't have
no
anywhere you
rules
have to
road
be.
trip. Yeah, the no agenda road trip, it's the best. Like, okay, yeah, you want to see the llama petting zoo in Iowa? We're going. You want to see the world's largest ball of twine in Kansas? We're going. Oh,
I love
it's
it.
fun.
Well, we'll wrap this up, Stephanie. It's been such a joy. But I want to go back to something that you said when you were talking about being a public defender. And I asked what are some of the things that you learned. And you said after some reflection, you get really good about thinking on your feet. And then you said you learn how to be a quick judge of people because it matters. It really matters as to the quality of job you can do. And you said you have to make quick connections.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said something really fascinating. You said you have to give them hope. You have to give them the opportunity to see something more in themselves.
Yeah.
And you have to put them in a light that helps other people see them in a new light.
Yeah.
And you said one more thing. You said you learned how to bet on the underdog and you created this passion for the underdog. And I can't help but think that part of you is just reveling in the chance to be the underdog and bring it back. And I see you as an outsider doing it. And I have incredible admiration for what you're doing. And
Thank
if
you.
there's anything we can do, we being whoever listens to this can do, we want to do it. We want to be part of the Stephanie Stuckey story here. So tell us how we can find you, how we can where we can find you physically in a store or where we can find you online. How can we learn more about you and what you are up to?
Oh, well, thank you. It's so easy, stuckies.com. And then just LinkedIn and Facebook under my name, and TikTok, Twitter, X, and Instagram are at Stuckey Stop, which is a take on an old Stuckey song, a jingle from the 1960s. Take a Stuckey stop, take a Stuckey stop. So yeah, follow me on any of those. And then really the best way you can help us, people often say, well, where's a Stuckey store so I can visit? We love those stores. By all means, please go to Paxico, Kansas, or Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Baghdad, Florida, Somerton, South Carolina, Johnson City, Illinois. But there's only a dozen original Stuckeys still around and operating. We do not own or operate them, and we do generate revenue from them. We love those stores. So by all means, stop. But they're few and far between. Most people aren't in Paxico, Kansas, or Vienna, Illinois, but you can go to your local Hobby Lobby or Ingles Food Store, Food Lion, Jet Foods in Georgia. So we're in Baumgars in South Dakota,
Hey, all right.
Rural King in Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. You know, some of these chains are At Home is nationwide. We're in the snack section. Please go to At Home, grab a bag of our pecans, because we've got to prove to those retailers that we have a high turn rate, that people will buy our product. So go to those stores and buy our product, and bonus points, snap a photo of the shelves, snap a photo of you with the product, which I prefer because everyone prefers to see people, not just the product, and send it to me on social media, post it on social media and tag me. And that, I want our customers to be our brand ambassadors.
I love it.
Yeah. So if you want to help me, buy a pecan log roll, buy our sea salt pecans. We have some healthy options if that's your jam, but pull over at any of the stores that carry our product and buy some nuts.
I love it. All right, Stephanie. Well, one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, there's a whole bunch of obvious ones, not the least of which is your enthusiasm and your message and your energy. But there were 7 things as I was watching you and studying you and reading about you that just overlap so much with Normal 40. And that is one we talked about, overcoming sunk costs and just deciding when it's your time to go, reinventing, just going for it, betting on yourself, embracing the struggle. You knew this was going to be hard. You probably didn't know how hard it was going to be on a lot of days, but you knew it was not going to be the job that was built for you that you were doing. The awakening of I'm going to do this and the excitement on that day to go do it. And then the last one is leaving a legacy that's yours, a legacy based on the things you said yes to, not the things you wish you would have. And I'm just totally blown away by how you check every one of those boxes for all of us. And you're setting the example. And I just want to say thank you. Keep doing you. And if there's anything that I can do, if there's anything anybody here can listen to do, and we're going to buy our pecan rolls and take pictures and post them, I am. You let us know. But thank you for your story. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being you. And thanks for being on the Normal 40 podcast.
Thank you, Lon. It was my pleasure.
All right, Stephanie. I'm going to see you on the next page.
Excellent. And my phone didn't die. I'm so glad. It's like 2%. So perfect timing. I didn't want it to cut
Awesome.
off. All right. Well, thank you so much. And just send it, send me the link and I'll repost, share, whatever, help publicize when it comes out.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're
Yeah.
exhausted. You did
Oh, it's
fantastic.
all good.
It was super cool to meet you.
I'll keep going. I'm going to get some coffee. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
See you on the next page. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, that is going to do it for me in another episode of Normal 40, the podcast. My name is Lon Stroschein. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much to my friend, Stephanie Stuckey, for giving me so much of your time here to share your story. For those of you who don't know, Stephanie's in demand. She's not just somebody you can call up on a whim and get on her calendar. So we worked a long time to make sure that we could bring this message to you and have this conversation. And I just hope you enjoyed it as much as me. So Stephanie, I just absolutely am an admirer of your story and where you're going and what you're doing. And so are the people who are here. Keep showing us the way. Everybody, if you're here and this message talked to you, I've got a few things you can do. You can buy my book, The Trade. That's great. You can also join my group called The Insider. It's $25 American a month. It might just be the best $25 you spend. If you don't like it, it's month to month. You can drop out the next month, and hey, no hard feelings here. And lastly, I've got a group called Vintage One. Vintage One is for people like us doing things like this. It's groups of 6. It's intimate. It's personal. And it lasts 8 months, and it will change your life. I absolutely promise it. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. A special shout out to my friend Damien Boudreau for this awesome theme music. It's the best in all podcast land. And I appreciate all of you being here, being part of my story, being part of this journey. And I hope all of you are up to something. And I hope all of you show up here again next time when I see you on the next page.